I need you to look me in the eyes right now because we are about to unpack a massive conspiracy that every single American is fed from the moment we are born. I am not exaggerating. If you grew up in the United States, you were subtly, subconsciously, and systematically conditioned to be absolutely terrified of British people. I was literally shocked when I realized how deep this runs, and today we are tearing the whole thing down. We're going to talk about the psychological warfare of British banter, the terrifying reality of their drinking culture, the historical trauma we are still carrying around from 1776, and why British customer service is actually designed to break your spirit. Let's completely scramble the timeline and start with something that hits you the absolute second you land at Heathrow: the conversational violence. In the US, we are taught that politeness means being relentlessly positive. If you are my friend, I hype you up. I tell you your outfit looks amazing, your ideas are brilliant, and your dog is the cutest thing I have ever seen. In the US, we would never dream of insulting our friends just for fun. If someone says, "Wow, those shoes are hideous," that is a declaration of war. Someone is getting blocked on Instagram, a group chat is being divided, and therapy will be required. Here is the truth about the UK. If a British person genuinely likes you, they will systematically destroy your self-esteem. They call it banter. I call it emotional terrorism. When I first got a job in London, my co-workers were absolutely brutal. They made fun of how I pronounced the word water. They mocked my enthusiasm. They told me my lunch looked like something that had already been digested. And I was sitting there at my desk, spiraling, thinking I needed to file a report with HR. But no, this is the psychological twist. That meant I was in. That meant they accepted me. Why do they do this? Psychologically, British culture is deeply rooted in something called tall poppy syndrome. Historically, in a very rigid class system, standing out, bragging, or thinking you are better than anyone else is the ultimate social sin. You are the tall poppy, and you must be cut down to size. So banter is a leveling mechanism. It is their way of saying we are all on the same level, nobody is special, so let's mutually roast each other to keep our egos in check. Contrast that with American exceptionalism, where we are literally brainwashed from kindergarten to believe we can be the president and that we are all unique little stars. When an American meets a British person, our earnest, fragile American ego collides with their dark, sarcastic leveling mechanism, and we perceive it as a threat. We are terrified of them because they refuse to validate our main character syndrome. Also, if you like these videos when they get a little more personal and a little less polished, join the membership below. That's where I share the deeper side of this journey with the people who actually want more than just the headline version. But let's pivot because the fear goes way further back than awkward office conversations. We need to talk about the Hollywood brainwashing. Think about every major movie you watched growing up. Who is the bad guy? Scar in The Lion King? British accent. The Imperial officers in Star Wars? British accents. Hans Gruber in Die Hard? Supposed to be German, played by Alan Rickman, with a brilliantly condescending British flair. Hannibal Lecter, played by Anthony Hopkins, Welsh, but leaning heavily into that crisp, upper-class British enunciation. Why do Americans automatically associate the British accent, specifically received pronunciation, that posh, crisp sound, with evil intelligence? This is a historical hangover. It goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War. The foundational myth of the United States is the scrappy, passionate, emotional underdog fighting against the cold, calculating, heavily structured empire. We broke away from the British Empire because we felt oppressed by a massive, sophisticated machine that viewed us as uncultured colonials. Over the last 200 years, American media internalized that dynamic. We coded the American accent to mean honesty, hard work, emotional transparency, and being the good guy. We coded the British accent to mean wealth, intelligence, calculation, and a lack of emotion. So when an American hears a British person speak, our subconscious immediately goes, "This person is smarter than me. They are plotting something, and they are probably going to tax my tea." We are intimidated by the sheer articulation. I was literally shocked when I found out that normal British people don't all speak like Hugh Grant or Tom Hiddleston, but because that's all we export to the US, the intimidation factor remains sky high. Now let's completely shift gears and talk about the actual physical danger of trying to keep up with British people in their natural habitat. I am talking about pub culture and the sheer, unadulterated terror of the British night out. In the US, drinking is an event. You turn 21, which is a ridiculously high age compared to the rest of the world, and drinking becomes this forbidden fruit that you finally get to consume. You make plans for Friday night, you dress up, you go to a bar, you have a few overpriced cocktails, and you go home. In the UK, drinking is not an event. It is the default setting of existence. It is the foundational glue of their entire society, and it terrified me. Here's the structural difference. Let's talk about the Licensing Act of 2003. Before this law, British pubs famously called last orders at 11 p.m. Everyone had to chug their drinks, and you were shoved out onto the street. This created a culture of binge drinking, getting as much alcohol into your system as humanly possible before the bell rang. But even though the 2003 Act allowed pubs to apply for longer, even 24-hour licenses to try and spread the drinking out and make it more European and relaxed, the binge culture didn't disappear. It just expanded. In the US, we would never go out on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. for a quick pint that accidentally turns into 8 pints, a kebab at midnight, and waking up on a train to a town you've never heard of. But here, that is a standard Tuesday, and the fear for Americans comes from the rounds system. Oh my God, we need to talk about the rounds system. This is a financial and biological trap. If you go to the pub with 5 British people, you do not buy your own drink. One person goes to the bar and buys 6 pints. When those pints are half empty, the next person stands up and buys 6 more. By the time it is your turn, you are legally obligated to buy 6 pints, and you are socially obligated to drink the 5 you have already been handed. Americans are terrified of British people because British people possess a liver capacity that defies medical science. We cannot keep up. If an American tries to go pint for pint with a British person, we will end up in the hospital, and the British person will end up at work the next morning at 8:30 a.m., sipping a tea, performing complex Excel spreadsheet equations as if they didn't just consume half a brewery the night before. It is intimidating. You fear what you cannot conquer, and an American can never conquer a British person in a pub. You live in constant fear of offending them, because they will never tell you that you offended them. They will just hold on to that grudge for 45 years and subtly leave you off the Christmas card list. It's a psychological thriller every time you interact with your neighbours. And speaking of neighbours, let's talk about the sheer panic of existing in British spaces. The infrastructure is designed to terrify Americans. I am talking about the roads. I drive in the US. I drive on massive 8-lane highways in Texas, where my car is the size of a small boat. You have space, you have freedom. It is the open road. Then you come to the UK, and you have to drive on a country road, a B road. These roads were designed in the year 1400 for a man and his donkey. They have not been widened since, and yet the national speed limit on a single-lane road, flanked by 10-foot-high impenetrable hedges made of ancient stone and aggressive brambles, is 60 miles per hour. You are flying blind around a corner so sharp it defies geometry, praying to God that there isn't a massive John Deere tractor coming the other way, and the British people driving behind you, they are practically in your back seat. They are tailgating you with the calm, terrifying precision of a Formula One driver, sipping a lukewarm coffee, slightly annoyed that you are only doing 50 in a 60 zone while you are actively having a panic attack. In the US, we would never accept this level of daily mortal peril just to go to the grocery store. You fear the British because their baseline for danger is completely warped. They survived the Blitz, and now they take it out on the A303. Very quickly, before we keep going, apparently around 87% of the people watching these videos are not subscribed yet, which feels a little suspicious because you do not end up this deep into a video like this by accident. So subscribe, because there is a lot more of this coming. Let's circle back to the psychology of all of this, because this is where it gets incredibly deep. Why do Americans feel so off balance here? It's because of the structural differences in how our societies handle vulnerability. In America, we have a massive therapy culture. It is completely normal, expected even, to meet someone at a party, and within 10 minutes you are discussing your childhood trauma, your anxiety medication, and your relationship with your mother. We value emotional oversharing as a sign of authenticity. If you cry, you are brave. The British have stoicism. Keep calm and carry on wasn't just a cute vintage poster. It was a government-mandated psychological defense mechanism during World War II, and it is still running in their veins. You do not complain. You do not make a fuss. Mustn't grumble is the national mantra. If a British person loses their leg in a horrific farming accident, they will literally describe it as a bit of a nuisance. So when an American, armed with our therapy speak and our desperate need for emotional validation, walks into a British space, we are met with an emotional brick wall. We think they are cold. We fear them because we cannot read them. We project our own insecurities onto their silence. When a British person doesn't immediately match our high energy enthusiasm, our American brain assumes they hate us. But the reality is they are just conserving their energy. They look at us like we are golden retrievers who have eaten way too much sugar. We fear their judgment, while they are just desperately hoping we don't try to hug them. And honestly, we have to talk about the media because the British press plays a massive role in why Americans think this country is terrifying. The tabloids here, oh my god. The US media can be harsh, but American journalism is still largely protected by the First Amendment, which means you have to prove actual malice to win a defamation case. It's hard to sue the press in the US. You'd think that would make US media wilder, but no. US media is terrified of alienating advertisers. British libel laws are actually notoriously strict. The burden of proof is often on the publisher, not the plaintiff. London is the libel capital of the world, and yet, despite these strict laws, the British tabloid press is the most savage, relentless, bloodthirsty media apparatus on the planet. They will build you up just to absolutely annihilate you. They will camp outside your house, hack your voicemails, literally, remember the news of the world scandal, and destroy your reputation over a weekend. Americans look at how the British press treats their own celebrities, their own royal family, their own politicians, and we are horrified. If they do that to their own royalty, what would they do to us? We fear the British because their culture of public shaming is a spectator sport. It is modern-day gladiatorial combat, printed on cheap paper and sold at the corner shop. Let's switch it up again. The food. We are told to fear British food. This is an American pastime. Roasting British cuisine. We joke about beans on toast. We joke about jellied eels. We think they eat like it's still 1942 and the rationing books are in full effect. But here is the truth, and this is the part that actually terrifies Americans when they move here. The food quality in the UK makes the US look like a dystopian science experiment. In the US, our food is heavily processed, packed with high fructose corn syrup, and pumped full of chemicals that are literally illegal in most of the world. We are raised on hyper-palatable, artificially flavored, brightly colored food products. So when we come to the UK and eat real, unadulterated food, our American taste buds don't know how to handle it. We fear the British because they actually know what a real potato tastes like. They have strict agricultural standards. You go to a British supermarket and a loaf of bread goes bad in 3 days because it doesn't have the shelf life of enriched uranium. But what really scares us is the grocery store experience itself. In the US, the grocery store is a sanctuary. It's huge. Soft lighting, music, cashiers who ask you how your day is going and pack your bags for you with a smile. In the UK, going to Aldi or Lidl or even Tesco is an extreme sport. The cashier scans your items at the speed of light. They do not bag it for you. You are expected to frantically throw your items back into your cart and scurry over to a designated packing area like a disgraced peasant. If you take too long, the British people behind you in the queue will not say anything. They will just sigh. A collective, heavy, disappointed British sigh that immediately drops your core body temperature. It is the most stressful 5 minutes of your week. And this brings me to the customer service divide. In the US, the customer is always right. We have built an entire economy on the back of tipping culture. Because servers and retail workers rely on tips to survive, which is a whole structural nightmare in itself, they are forced to perform a highly exaggerated, submissive version of friendliness. Hi guys, my name is Brad. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Let me know if you need absolutely anything. You are a king. I love you. British customer service is essentially, you are lucky, we are allowing you to purchase this item. Minimum wage here, while still completely inadequate in the current economy, is structured differently. Tipping is not the sole lifeline of a server's existence. Therefore, they do not have to pretend to be your best friend. If you walk into a British pub and ask the bartender to modify a menu item, Can I get the burger, but no bun? Substitute the chips for a side salad, and can you put the sauce on the side? In the US, Brad says, absolutely no problem. In the UK, the bartender will look at you, look at the menu, look back at you, and say, no, just no. Complete refusal to cater to your nonsense. I was literally shocked the first time a waitress told me I couldn't alter a dish. I didn't know how to compute it. Americans fear British customer service because it is the one place on earth where our money does not buy us unearned respect. They do not care that you are a paying customer. They care that you are being annoying. It strips Americans of our power, and it forces us to realize that we are not the center of the universe. Let's do a massive counter argument right now, because a lot of people watching this might be thinking, Olivia, you're making the UK sound like a miserable, hostile place. But that's the beautiful paradox of why we fear them. We fear them because they are authentic in a way that American society doesn't allow us to be. Our fear is actually a projection of our own exhaustion. Americans are exhausted from the performative positivity. We are exhausted from the hustle culture, the relentless grind, the need to constantly self-promote on LinkedIn, the pressure to be the best, the brightest, the most successful. When we look at the British, we see a culture that embraces mediocrity in the most comforting way possible. The British are allowed to be grumpy. They are allowed to say, I had a rubbish day. They are allowed to sit in a dark, sticky carpeted pub in absolute silence with a pint, and nobody is going to bother them and ask them to smile. We fear the British because they represent the death of the American dream and the realization that maybe the American dream is just a marketing scam. Think about it. We are told that if we work hard, we can have anything. The British know that the system is rigged. They've had a class system for 1,000 years. They know the game is rigged from birth. So instead of burning themselves out trying to become billionaires, they prioritize time off. They get 28 days of statutory paid leave a year by law. 28 days. In the US, you are lucky if you get 10, and if you take them, your boss looks at you like you just committed treason. When Americans come to the UK and see people finishing work at exactly 5 p.m., shutting their laptops and walking away without checking their emails until the next morning, we are horrified. We think, how is anything getting done? Why aren't they grinding? But deep down, the fear is actually jealousy. We are terrified that the British have figured out how to live a balanced life, and that our entire American identity based on overwork and overachievement is actually just a trauma response to late-stage capitalism. So we mock their teeth, we mock their food, we mock their accents. We hold on to the Boston Tea Party like it happened last Tuesday. We tell ourselves that we are the innovators and they are the stagnant, stuffy museum of a country. But the truth is, when an American meets a British person, the power dynamic immediately shifts. Let's talk about the final layer of this fear, the intellectual intimidation of their humour. British comedy relies heavily on irony, understatement, and self-deprecation. American comedy relies on punchlines, physical comedy, and exaggeration. If a British person makes a joke, they will not laugh at their own joke. They will deliver it completely deadpan. If you do not laugh, they will not explain it to you. They will just let you sit in the uncomfortable silence of your own ignorance. I remember sitting at a dinner party, another terrifying British concept. The dinner party, and the host dropped a joke, so dry, so coated in layers of sarcasm and historical references that I just sat there blinking. In the US, if a joke bombs, the person backpedals. Hey, just kidding, ma'am. Rough crowd. In the UK, they just let the silence hang. They weaponize silence. They are entirely comfortable with awkwardness. Americans have a pathological need to fill silence. If there is a lull in the conversation, an American will immediately start talking about the weather, their commute, or their recent colonoscopy, just to avoid the quiet. The British will just stare at you, peacefully sipping their wine, watching you unravel. It is a psychological masterclass. They let us defeat ourselves. They let our own anxiety do the heavy lifting. So why are Americans told to fear the British? Because structurally, historically, and psychologically, they are our exact opposites, masquerading under the illusion that we share a common language. We do not share a language. When an American says quite good, it means it was excellent. When a British person says quite good, it means it was a catastrophic failure, but they are too polite to say it outright. We are two nations divided by a common tongue. Yes, but more importantly, we are two nations divided by completely different coping mechanisms. We cope through blind optimism. They cope through dark pessimism. We cope by shouting. They cope by whispering. We cope by shooting off fireworks. They cope by putting the kettle on. I have lived here for 2 years. I have survived the banter. I have survived the round system. I have learnt how to use a roundabout without having a heart attack. And I have accepted that I will never fully understand the rules of cricket. But I will tell you this, the fear doesn't go away. It just evolves into a deep, begrudging respect. You should fear the British, not because they are Hollywood villains, not because they are going to colonize you, but because they will look right through your American, hyper-positive, heavily caffeinated facade. They will identify your deepest insecurity. They will casually destroy it with a sarcastic comment, and then they will offer you a cup of tea. And the worst part, you will drink the tea and you will say, "Thank you." That is the absolute truth about the US-UK dynamic. It is a psychological thriller, it is a test of endurance, and it is the most fascinating cultural clash on the planet. Keep your guard up, never try to match them pint for pint, and for the love of God, if they sign an email with regards, just pack your bags and move to another country.